Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're going to talk to a guy who is a very accomplished architect in the New York City metro area, has had his finger on the pulse of design work for decades. And we're going to get current updates, trends, and learn a lot about the whole field of architecture, how it can apply to you if you're looking to make some changes within your domain, your structure, either home or something commercial. He's Mr. John Riggio, and he's back with us. Hi, John. How you doing?
Good. Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm well. Let's go back, if we could, in terms of your beginning in architecture. Your whole goal was design. You were driven to that because you love designing. What's that? It's often said that design isn't an invention. Tell us more about that.
Yes, I think a lot of times people might confuse an invention with a design. And I think this idea I first started to learn when I was in college. Because design is really taking the building codes. It is then using the factors of the property, all the different things with the use, the occupancy, and the size of the building, the architectural history, the current architectural trends. And if you take all those different things together, that's really the design. But I think starting in college, every once in a while, you might have a professor that might propose something where we're doing something more like an invention. And that causes a big problem for the students. I remember anything that has an invention, you can start to grind on trying to figure out what you're inventing. And I think one basic problem was, I think architect students, they don't really have any background in invention. This is really, invention is like another degree altogether called product engineering, is where you would invent something, maybe get a patent for it. And I think in like things like product engineering, they would get maybe so many patents per year. They have so many inventions where they update their inventions, new inventions. But I think in architect work, each design, it really isn't an invention. So in class, I remember a few times them proposing a design is more like a new invention. Could cause a big problem, like you're figuring out some kind of puzzle. And it is very difficult to do that. I think that is very similar to if you're in architecture design class and they told each student to go and start their own business papers. They'd have no idea how to get business papers going. You would really have taken business classes to really have any idea. To still try to figure that out without not any knowledge is very difficult. So I think that is one thing about design and invention. So I think in everyday practice here with my office, I don't get into any really invention. I think the only things as far as everyday work, people who are doing things more inventive, might be even like an interior designer might do something a little more inventive. Like they might take like ordinary materials, piping or things, and they might put it together and create like a new molding, new light fixtures, things like that. But as far as the architect work goes, we're not really doing that. I think another thing that might be more inventive might be just doing plain art. If you were to do plain art where you're welding things together, might be more like an invention. But as far as the architect goes, the everyday work isn't really inventing. It's really design, taking all those factors I said about the architectural history, current trends, construction techniques, zoning, putting it together is really getting into design. And I think that's what most architects are really trained with. They went to college, learned all those different things, and that's really the design. So that's
it's an interesting point, John, because when I think of design work or architecture, in my mind, I believe a lot of others, we're thinking that you're coming up with this, you're inventing a home. Different. Everybody's home is different. Everything is a fresh look at things, but it's not an invention. You're using design elements to put the pieces together based on code, based on thermal units to make sure it's energy efficient. All of that all come together in terms of the design. So thanks for that clarification there, because it's funny. We look at it, somebody like you could look at it as, oh, you just invented that house because it's a different house. It may look like another one that you had designed, but essentially it is totally different. But it's based on different principles of you putting things together. Um, how about continuing education? Somebody looking to get into the field, what can you tell us about that?
Because I think a lot of people getting into architect work, becoming a licensed architect, I think starting off, no one really knows that they have something called continuing education requirements. And these requirements are really just to keep your license current. They require some basic education, usually 12 hours, to continue your license and meet the basic requirements. And a lot of these classes, they're good. They're intended to really so you keep brushed up on all of the current trends in construction, different building codes that have been updated, and different things like that. And that's really what the education is required to have. Which is there are many good things about it. I think you can always go to different seminars when you go in person. You might pay a fee for it, and a lot of times it might include like a lunch. You would get at least a 1 hour educational center. Sometimes they group it together where you get eight. You could do it like in the afternoon. They have a whole big thing like that, and from that you get meet your education requirements, and it works pretty good. And they even have that like at the different home expos. A lot of times they might have educational classes. Some of them are really certified to give you an education unit. So you have to meet the 12 education units for the year. And so if you go to like different like things like the home show, a lot of architects, other professionals might go there and they can meet some of their requirements. So I think there's a lot of good things about that. But I think a lot of people don't realize that. And I think what happens is it becomes a little stressful starting up because a lot of people, they always have the same thing of having to go through so much education. Then apprenticeship can be difficult, and then getting your license, passing the exams. And then you find out you need to continue going to school. You even have to pay for some of it. And I think one problem is that it can distract people from going for another degree. I think a lot of architects, I don't think a lot of them are going for master's degrees. The only time you really need the master's degree is if you did a 4 and a 2 to get the master's degree. But to get the next degree is one thing about architect work. It usually involves specializing. I think if you get the next degree and it's just in the field of architect work, it's more of specializing what kind of work that you were doing in your office or what you want to expand on, things like that. They usually have master's degrees, like in city planning, things like that. They even have they have another design degree if you want to go for. But I think the continuing education I noticed was sort of making people sort of taking up some of their time. They even have so that was taking up some of their time, and I think I just noticed that was one thing that a lot of people don't know is that architects need to take continuing education, and then they sort of can preoccupy your mind with a lot of people aren't concerning themselves with getting more degrees. I noticed when talking to people, yes.
I'm curious, John, when you look at architecture now as compared to, let's say, 20 years ago, 25, aside from the technology, because now it's more computer assisted and there's lots going on there, aside from some code updates along the way, is it kind of the same overall, then versus now?
Yes. I think one thing is there is a continuing upgrade, like you were just saying, with the code, construction materials, construction techniques, and it is important to keep up to all those different things. Yes, there is a constant changing. They're trying to always improve things in the industry, doing all kinds of different trends. There's as far as the architect in office work, there's like things with more computerization, 3D visualizing. And then out in the field, there's a lot more things we're trying to do things with, like I was saying, with superior walls, a lot of pre-manufactured things, materials, things like that. And But yes, as far as the you do need to keep up with the improvements. Things have changed. The codes have changed over the years, and they usually are trying to make improvements in the industry.
So aside from the codes and the technology, the computer assisted situation, it seems to be very much the same. What's the situation now with the supply chain? I remember when we talked about this a number of months ago. There were some big challenges, getting certain windows, getting plywood, and all of that. Things have opened up now. Things are a lot better.
Yeah, I think as far as on the short term, the recession fears are over. Uh, the cost of construction is going up slightly, and but the supplies they seem to have leveled off. Everything has seemed to have become back to normal, and so as far as that's concerned, that's good. Things have stabilized a little. All those little things shaking, the business might slow down, and then things are going to become too expensive, and you can't find supplies. A lot
Mm.
of those things seem to have calmed down right now, and so that is good.
If somebody were to say to you, uh, I'm thinking of doing a renovation on my house, thinking about it right now, based on the trends, supplies, and all of that, would you say, you might want to wait a few months? Or would you say, yeah, do it now? Good to go.
Yes, I mean, well, as far as during the year, each year, what happens is there's always a start of construction in March. Things start to warm up, and the ground starts to thaw, and that is when a lot of the foundation work it starts. So there's I always recommend people to really start their planning like all the way starting even as early as maybe September to start the planning on their project, get everything together as far as the drawings, get the permits going, and then you're ready for the springtime, like starting in March to ready to build. I think uh, because then the closer you get to March, there's always a chance your project can get delayed till the middle of the summer, and then you're heading in back into the colder weather. It's more difficult to do a lot of things in the construction these days. I think the winter months you can't really finish the drive it finish on the house. It goes
Mm,
under 75 degrees, and then there's some problems with finishing that. They might have
wow,
to wait all the way to springtime to put the finish coat on. So it's
wow.
still each year there's still those things as far as the different seasons here that you still take in consideration to get your project going, and that is the one thing about it.
Gotcha. Um, I want to go back to something you had mentioned in the past, and just it was in a quick mention, but the $40,000 check.
Yes,
What is that all about?
what happens is I noticed over the years, especially when I was gaining experience, a lot of people they bid on these jobs and they get a certain kind of project that they're always waiting for this $40,000 check. Sometimes it's even to start the project, sometimes it's the final check. But there's always this story of a $40,000 check that I noticed over a number of years too on these larger projects. And this thing with the $40,000 seems to put a lot of stress on everyone. Everyone is either waiting for this check to start the project or they're waiting on this check to finish the project. And I think sometimes, depending on what your arrangement is with who you're working for, the employees might not have been paid until they receive this check. And I
Hmm.
noticed sometimes the check never arrives. That's was one interesting thing. But there was always this story of this $40,000 check. I think in my office, I really from having so many experiences working with people with the stories of the $40,000 check, I always watched it. And
Why a $40,000 check? It almost seems like I don't want to say a running joke in the industry, but it's like one of those things that come up. How did it even start? Do you know?
um, yeah, I don't know why. This just has to do with a certain size check, usually a larger project where people are bidding on. And as far as my office is concerned, I always avoid any kind of thing like this with the $40,000 check payment. But I noticed a lot of people got fooled for this. Maybe it's like a joke they did on people to either get to start. I don't know. A lot of times, if you the whole thing is maybe if you're getting a $40,000 check to start the job,
Mm,
Maybe they thought that you would do the whole project and then know you
right.
somehow you get the check, or you'd finish a job and forget about the check. I don't know if it was a joke, but this is for so many different offices about this waiting for this large check was some kind of funny joke. And I think a lot of it wasn't so funny that maybe some people they didn't get paid. They worked and didn't get paid for their work, and then everyone's
Yeah.
waiting around for the check. People might start getting laid off because of it. So although it was like a might have been like a joke of some kind, it wasn't that funny, but it was just something typical. And I think everyone had to then they really had to just sweat out waiting until $40,000.
Right.
Like it was that was
That's
the
it.
story.
If that's the case, that's a cruel joke, especially for a new architect getting into the industry. What's your advice, John? Somebody is interested in design work, architecture, just has a love of buildings and just looking at the way they're put together and thinking about going down that career path or maybe even changing it. What are your thoughts? What's your advice to them?
Oh, okay. You mean if they want to get into designing, working as an architect?
Exactly.
Well, I guess it depends on where they're starting. If they're starting in high school, I guess they could start getting on their path right away as far as education. Like I said before, taking an education that is just as architecture or architectural, if you
Hmm.
know you really want to become a licensed architect. And then I think over the years, I think a lot of people are interested to become an architect as like a changing career. I think a
Okay.
number of people do that. I think even in college, a number of students they were really much older, maybe in their 40s or even their 50s. I think some students they might thought that was a little strange, But in fact, then I'm older. It doesn't seem strange for people to really to go to school at an older age to become an architect, especially if they are highly concentrated in really making the drawings. Sitting there making the drawings and I think one thing about architect work and construction is you aren't out with um, uh, too many people around you. Unless if you want to go talk to people, you can do it at any time. But I think one thing that people might like about architect work and construction is that once you get into the industry working, there aren't too many factors around you that are bothering you every minute. So that is one good thing about it. That people might like that. It
Mm,
isn't like you're working customer service in a store with so many people walking in the door
sure.
and potentially problems around you all every minute. It isn't really the same kind of work. So that is one thing about it. So I think as far as someone older getting into the profession, it sort of does work the same way. I think you really have to go to college. Most people just go right to college. They know all about the accreditations. I think they're all aware of things like that. And then I had already explained that if you're already working as a draftsman and you decide you just want architecture work, a lot of people go for that NCARB and they might start going for the degrees to meet all the requirements. That's another thing that starts to happen.
How many years have you been an architect?
Well, I've been working in the field since 1987 is when I started the college, but I've also had many years of training with the mechanical drawing going back starting in middle school. And of course, the art backing, which was like the basis of like art skills. I had like 12 years of arts classes going, starting off when I was young. They had a lot of that in my school district, so I had a lot of experience that's backing doing architectural work.
For you, what's your favorite type of work? Of course, you do all different types of work, be it residential, commercial, renovations and such. But somebody would walk in the door right now and say, "Hey, I got a project for you," and you could pick whatever project you want them to say. What do you think it would be?
Well, I think from over the years, I think there's more profit in some of the commercial projects. Were more profitable. And I
Mm,
think they could also be more stable as long as there is a continuing amount of projects coming in. The residential line of work, uh, I've been keeping on. Things are going very good, but I think the commercial jobs could be more profitable. as far as getting nice sized jobs, and you can get a little more money
Mm-hmm.
on those projects. But as far as just comparing it with residential work, a lot of people, you look at a lot of things like gas stations, commercial, industrial buildings. Some people might not be too interested. Maybe they think it's a little boring. A lot of the residential jobs I do, they're a lot more involved with designing and interacting with the clients, making things really work, how things are going to work in their house, all the rooms are going to work and everything like that. And I think people look at those projects in my portfolio and they think they really like them. They have a nice look about them. They're very interesting. And they're a little more time consuming compared to a commercial job, but they are good too. So I've kept a variety of work on, and it seems for that reason, and a lot of it has to do with different trends, ups and downs in the economy, and the different kinds of jobs. They usually change from year to year. Some jobs, different kinds of jobs are put off for a while. New jobs come back. For instance, I was doing a lot of stores, and I think a lot of the store jobs are coming back. One store was that Hibachi Express. So the Hibachi Express job, it didn't make the newspaper locally over here.
Wow.
Yes, one of the openings over here, it did open, and they showed it in the local newspaper. The paper was shown online. So they showed the front of it with the owners were there. Some local town people that were from the local government was there, and they have a photograph of them in front of the Hibachi Express.
That really is exciting, because that design of that business, people are enjoying themselves, enjoying food and gatherings and things like that, and you're behind that. If the design isn't right, even just waiting in the the waiting area, if it's the energy's not right, the setup is not right, something feels off. So it's got to feel good when the design is done and you walk in there and see people just having a great time, and it's because of you created this whole thing for them.
Yes, so I think that was a successful project for them, because I think each project, even if it's like a restaurant, there's always a chance the project can be stopped anywhere along the way. There can always be a problem with it. It could be stopped in the building department. They might not issue the permit very quickly. But this job went ahead very quickly, and they even put it in the newspaper. So that was good. They're happy that they have that new restaurant there.
Yeah,
so
good.
That was a successful project.
Good for you, John. I know you're available for a consultation. Anybody has any questions, certainly. Design-wise, your license, if I remember correctly, New York and Pennsylvania? I'm trying to remember.
Yes, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Yes.
Gotcha. Website is johnriggio.com, Riggio, johnriggio.com. John, always great having you on. I know sometimes we talk about your tennis career as well, so it was great to dig back into architecture, and I appreciate you being here. Look forward next time we get a chance to get together.
Thanks a lot. Good for having me here.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.